Here's Donald Trump being asked a question about the anxiety that people have about school reopening. This question was asked in shortly after it. California announced that San Diego and LA school systems, the two of the biggest in the country, will not be reopening, at least in September. And here's Donald Trump. I don't know how they thought all this stuff would just take care of itself, but they're still going with that one.
Yes, Mr. President, Los Angeles just announced that they are delaying the opening of their schools. New York already said they were going to delay them. Other school districts are giving parents the choice whether to send their kids to school or not. What do you tell parents who look at this, who look at Arizona where a school teacher recently died teaching summer school, parents who are worried about the safety of their children in public schools?
The schools should be opened. Schools should be opened. If these kids want to go to school, you're losing a lot of lives by keeping things closed. We did the right thing. We saved millions of lives. We saved millions of lives when we did the initial closure. Had we not done what we did, we would have had Mike and I were talking about it before, 2 to 3 million lives lost. But we did that. So we're at about 135,000, and we'll be at somewhat higher than that by the time it ends. And again, the vaccines are happening and the therapeutics are happening, but I'm not even talking about that. So we'll be at a somewhat higher, but we would have lost 2 million, 3 million lives had we not done it. Now we understand it also. We understand there are certain vulnerabilities, young children.
Yeah.
What is their incentive? I cannot wrap my head around it. If you're going to look at Betsy DeVos's scheme to privatize schools, I look at Puerto Rico where most of the schools were shut down. They forced them to shut down. They closed all these schools. I just don't understand what the incentive is here.
What they're banking on? I mean, I don't know. Donald Trump, from an electoral standpoint, I don't understand how they're operating. And maybe to a certain extent, there are other forces that are basically, giving him policy advice because look, the more you destroy all of this infrastructure, right? And that's what we're doing. I mean, we're undercutting the public school systems here. We're undercutting all of government functions. The more you do that, all you're left with is the power of money. And that power against a weakened governmental infrastructure, and one that has diminished support from its citizenry, because why wouldn't you, right? I mean, you can't necessarily make the distinction. It's hard for you to say, oh, the reason why my state, or city has cut jobs and diminished services is because the federal government's not stepping up. And the reason why the federal government's not stepping up is because Donald Trump and the White House and the Republic. I mean, that's, most people don't necessarily have the time or spend the time to think about it in those terms. And so as you destroy the infrastructure and the support for government, all you're left is the power of money at that point. I mean, there's
so many of these like local governments. I mean, and for the most part, they fund the public schools. They are stepping up and saying, with exception to Orange County and some conservative, but Los Angeles, San Diego, they've stepped up and said, we are closing our schools down. There's no financial. That's actually rewarding the local government because they don't have to pay. They still have to pay property. There's still other payments, but it's actually reducing their budget. I just don't understand what the mindset is. You're just going to have teachers organizing protests around the country saying they refuse to show up to work because they don't want to endanger their communities.
That weakens teacher unions, doesn't it? I mean, creating this dynamic where even if it's 30% of parents want to send their kids back to school, and they're blaming the teachers because the teachers just don't want to get sick, that dynamic undercuts teachers' unions.
But how many people are, really? You think, is it 30% of parents want to send their kids back to school?
I would imagine there's a lot more, but that want to send their kids back to school, but then people are afraid to. But I think there's at least, I'm looking at the data, and there's at least 30% who are like, I want my kids back in school, period, end of story, without any other sort of qualifications.
They don't want their kids as well.
They're in other words, they're not afraid. Right. Let's put it this way. They're not afraid to put their kids back into school.
Right.
I mean, I would like my kids back into school. I'm afraid to do it. I'm not sure where I'm going to fall on this. You know, if it's open in September, I don't know if I'll send my kids back to school. I mean, I'm almost adamant about not sending my high schooler back. The risk is less for younger kids. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about that one, but I don't. I think it's highly unlikely I'm going to send my high schooler back to school. So
I don't blame you.
We'll see. Mila, if you're listening, we'll talk about it later. Sorry for you to hear about it this way.